Today I'm going to go over the worksheet, the Solve Systems of Equations worksheet. Number 1, using substitution. Alright, it's white, it's double-sided, it has 12 problems. There's 5 steps. Step 1, you're going to pick one variable. Your goal is to have no number in front, or in other terms, a coefficient of 1. You're going to solve for that variable, or get it by itself. You're just going to substitute the expression from step 1 into the other equation. That's the big idea. It has to be the other one. You're going to solve. In step 3, you're going to get a number answer. You're going to plug that answer from step 3 into your original. Guess what? You're going to get another number answer. You're going to take those two answers and you're going to write it as an ordered pair. Remember, an ordered pair is x, then y in parentheses. Alright, that's what we're going to do. Alright, number 1, we have 2x plus 3y equals 5, x minus 5y equals 9. Step 1. I'm going to look at all 4 of these variables. And I'm going to circle the one that has the least amount of stuff with it, or it's the simplest. This top x has a coefficient of 1. That's the one I want. So I'm going to write that equation, x minus 5y. I circled x, so that means I have to get x by itself. So I add 5y to both sides. I end up with x equals 9 plus 5y. Since what I circled is all by itself, I'm done with step 1. Step 2. Since I used the top equation, or the bottom equation in step 1, I have to use the top equation. So I write 2x plus 3y equals 5. I circled x. I got x by itself. So that means I'm going to write an empty space for x. 2 blank space plus 3y equals 5. I'm going to take 9 plus 5y. I'm going to plug it in for x. That's the end of the substitution step. Most people make some mistakes distributing or combining like terms. So I'm going to distribute. The 2 goes to 9 and 5y. So I get 18 plus 10y plus 3y equals 5. That's going to take me to step 3. Step 3, I'm going to combine 10y and 3y. I'm going to end with 13y plus 18 equals 5. I subtract 18 from both sides. I get 13y equals negative 13. So y equals negative 1. That's my first number answer. I'm done with step 3. Now I have to do step 4. Step 4 says we're going to go back to the original. It doesn't matter which one you do. I'm going to use the bottom one. So step 4, I'm going to write x minus 5y equals 9. Now look, I solved for y, so I'm going to take negative 1. I'm going to plug it in for y. I'm going to say x minus 5 times negative 1 equals 9. I'm going to have x plus 5 equals 9. So x equals 4 when I subtract 5 from both sides. Alright? Now step 5 says that you have to take those two answers, you have two number answers, and you have to write it as an ordered pair. So step 5 says that you're going to have 4, negative 1 is the solution. And that's it. That's your answer. All right, 4, negative 1 as an ordered pair. All right, number 2, we have negative 2x plus y equals 6. We have 4x minus 2y equals 5. Once again, for step 1, I'm going to look at all 5 of these variables, or all 4 of these variables. I have negative 2x, I have y, I have 4x minus 2y. The top y is the most simple of the 4. It already has a coefficient of 1. So step 1, I'm going to write minus 2x plus y equals 6. I'm going to add 2x to both sides, and I get y equals 6 plus 2x, or 2x plus 6. That's it for step 1. Now I have to move on to step 2. Step 2 says if I use the top equation in step 1, I have to use the bottom equation in step 2. So I write 4x minus 2y equals 5. Alright, I circled y, I got y by itself, so that means I'm going to write 4x minus 2, empty space, empty space equals 5. I'm going to take 6 plus 2x from step 1, I'm going to plug it right in those empty set of parentheses. Alright, now the hardest part in step 2 is actually going to be the distributive property. Most people will make a sign mistake with that negative 2 in front. So negative 2 goes to both. I end up with 4x minus 12 minus 4x equals 5. Now the interesting part about number 2 is 4x minus 4x, they cancel each other out. So I'm left with no variables. So if the variables cancel out, you must see if it's true or false. Alright? So what's left is negative 12 equal to 5. That's a false statement. So my final answer is since false, there's no solution. And guys, what that means, that's just a really fancy way to say these are parallel lines. Alright, and that's it for number 2. Alright, number 3. Same thing we're going to do as we've done every single time, is I'm going to look at all 4 of these letters. I have 4x, minus 5y, 2y, and negative x. Negative x is the only one without a number in front. So even though it's got a negative sign, I'm still going to pick that as my most simple of the 4. So step 1, I'm going to write minus x plus 2y equals 3. I'm going to subtract 2y from both sides because remember, I'm supposed to be getting x by itself. I end up with the opposite of x equals 3 minus 2y. It just means I have to divide everything by negative 1, so I have to do one more step. And I end up with x equals negative 3 plus 2y. So if there's a negative in front, it just means you have one more step before step 1. If anything in step 1 is longer than that, you probably did something wrong. So that's the longest step 1 should ever take. Now, step 2 says I have to use the other equation. I have to use the bottom because I started with the top. So I write 4x minus 5y equals negative 3. Now, remember, I circled x, I got x by itself, so I write a big empty set of parentheses for x. Minus 5y equals negative 3. So I'm going to take this negative 3 plus 2y, I'm going to plug it right in there for instead of x. So negative 3 plus 2y. A good self-check at this step, guys, is make sure you have only one variable showing up. I have all y's. If you have x's and y's after you substitute, you did something wrong. So, I'm going to distribute. 4 times negative 3 is minus 12. 4 times 2y is plus 8y. Then I have minus 5y equals negative 3. These are like terms, and that's going to take me into step 3. So step 3 says I'm going to start solving. I combine my like terms, I get 3y minus 12 equals negative 3. I add 12 to both sides. I get 3y equals 9, so y equals 3. That's my number answer, like I should have got for step 3. That means I have to go to step 4. And step 4 says, I'm going to take this 3, and I'm going to plug it into one of the originals. I'm going to use the top. So I'm going to say minus x plus 2y equals 3. I'm going to plug 3 right in there, so I'm going to say minus x plus 2 times 3 equals 3. Well, 2 times 3 is 6, so I have minus x plus 6 equals 3. I subtract 6 from both sides, I get minus x equals negative 3, so x equals positive 3. There's my second number answer. So finally, step 5. So step 5 says I'm going to take those two number answers, I'm going to write them as a ordered pair. 3, 3 is the solution. Remember, you cannot skip step 5. Step 5 is not optional. You have to do step 5 because it tells me you know that your answer is 1 point when x is 3 and at the same time y is 3. Alright, so number 4, same thing we've been doing. You're going to look at these 4 variables. Top x, top y, bottom x, bottom y. The bottom y is the most simple because it does not have a number in front. So step 1, I'm going to write the bottom equation, 5x plus y equals 16. I subtract 5x from both sides because remember, I want to get y by itself. So I have y equals minus 5x plus 16. Alright, that makes us move on to step 2. Step 2 says I'm going to use the top equation because I used the bottom equation in step 1. So I write 5x plus 3y equals 4. Now, instead of y, I'm going to write empty set of parentheses. So I put negative 5x plus 16 in the parentheses. Negative 5x plus 16. I kind of squeezed it in there. I didn't make those parentheses big enough. I'm going to distribute. So I have 5x plus, or 5x minus 15x. Don't make a side mistake there. 3 times 16 is 48, so it's plus 48 equals 4. Step 3 says you're going to combine your like terms, and you're going to get minus 10x plus 48 equals 4. Now I'm going to subtract 48 from both sides. I get minus 10x equals minus 44. I divide by negative 10, divide by negative 10. I get x equals, I would have wrote 22 over 5, but you're probably going to write 4.4. Either one of those are okay, and that's a number answer. Step 4, so they need to take that 4.4, I need to plug it into one of the original equations. I'm going to use 5x plus y equals 16. 5 times 4 so I'm going to put 4.4 in for x. I'm going to get 22 plus y equals 16. I subtract 22 from both sides. I get y equals negative 6. So now I have a number answer for x, a number answer for y. That means I can finally move on to step 5. And step 5 says that I just write as an ordered pair. 22 fifths, negative 6 is the solution. And that's it for number 4. Alright, number 5, exact same concept, so I'm going to start picking it up a little bit. Hopefully by now you understand what's going on. I pick negative x for step 1, so step 1, alright, negative x plus 2y equals 5. I minus 2y from both sides. I get minus x equals 5 minus 2y. I divide everything by negative 1. Remember, you divide all 3 things by negative 1. I get x equals negative 5 plus 2y. Step 1 is now done. We move on to step 2. Step 2 says I'm going to use the top equation. So I write 4, and I'm going to put an empty parentheses in for x, plus 6y equals 15. I'm going to take negative 5 plus 2y and plug it right in. Now I'm going to distribute. I get negative 20 plus 8y plus 6y equals 15. All right. I'm going to combine my like terms. And that's going to give me step 3. I have 14y minus 20 equals 15. I add 20 to both sides. I get 14y equals 35. Divide both sides by 14. Get y equals 35 over 14. Or you might put 2.5. Which gives us on to step 4. I'm going to use my bottom equation. I'm going to say minus x plus 2, 35 over 14 equals 5. This becomes minus x plus 35 over 7 equals 5. And I subtract 35 over 7 from both sides. I get minus x equals, I'm silly. 35 over 7 is 5. I didn't see that right away. I'm crazy. So 35 over 7 is 5. Oh, because I should have simplified that to 5 halves. I would have seen that a little bit better. So I get negative x equals 0, so x equals 0. That means my final ordered pair is just going to be 0 for x, and then I'll say 5 halves. Maybe you put 2.5 for y. All right, number 6, we have 3x minus y equals 4, 5x plus 3y equals 9. I circle the minus y. So in step 1, I have 3x minus y equals 4. I subtract 3x from both sides. I get y equals 4 minus 3x. Step 2, I'm going to use the bottom equation, so I write 5x. Remember, I circled y in the top. I got y by itself, so I make a big empty space for y equals 9. I put 4 minus 3x in 4y. Now I distribute. 5x plus 12 minus 9x equals 9. Combine my like terms. So now step 3. I get minus 4x plus 12 equals 9. I subtract 12 from both sides. I get minus 4x equals negative 3. So x equals 3/4. That's my first number answer. So now I move on to step 4. Well, step 4 says I'm going to take that 3/4. I'm going to plug it into the top equation. So I'm going to say 3 times 3/4 minus y equals 9. I get 9/4 minus y equals 9. I'm going to subtract 9/4 from both sides. So I get minus y equals 27 over 4. So y equals negative 27 over 4. So my ordered pair in step 5 is I'm going to take my x, I'm going to take my y. I'm going to say 3/4 negative 27/4 is the solution. All right, number 7, I have 1/2 x plus y equals 9, 7x plus 4y equals 24. I did mention in class you could keep it the way it is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply everything by 2. So I'm going to multiply the 1/2 x by 2, I'm going to multiply the y by 2, multiply the 9 by 2. So everything's going by 2. This is a good way to set up our next lesson. So I really like this idea of multiplying everything by something. Just make sure you do it correctly. I multiply all 3 things by 2. 1/2 x times 2 is just x. Y times 2 is just 2y. 9 times 2 is equal to 18. I didn't change this bottom one. I left it the same. So my new system of equations is 7x plus 4y equals 24. When we get into elimination, we'll use something like that a lot more often, where we multiply by a number to make something we want show up. So now I circle the x. So step 1, I have x plus 2y equals 18. I subtract 2y from both sides. I get x equals 18 minus 2y. All right, that takes me into step 2. Step 2 says I'm going to use the bottom equation. So I say 7 instead of x. I put 18 minus 2y plus 4y equals 24. I distribute the 7. I get 126 minus 14y plus 4y equals 24. Step 3 says I'm going to combine my like terms. I'm going to get minus 10y plus 126 equals 24. I subtract 126 from both sides. So this is still step 3. I get minus 10y equals negative 102. I divide both sides by negative 10. I get y equals, you might use 10.2. I probably would use 51 over 5. Both those are acceptable. All right. Now, I'm going to go into my step 4. So, I plug in 10.2 for y. So I say x plus 2 times 10.2 equals 18. 2 times 10.2 is 20.4, so I have x plus 20.4 equals 18. I subtract 20.4 from both sides. I get x equals negative 2.4. So now step 5 says I need to write this as an ordered pair. So I'm going to take that, write as an ordered pair. And my final answer is negative 2.4. Oh. For x, 10.2 for y. That's it. Alright, step 1, I circle the y. So I have y I have minus 3x plus y equals 2. I add 3x to both sides. I get y equals 3x plus 2. Step 2, so I use the bottom equation in step 2. I say 8x minus 15 times 3x plus 2, because remember I just substituted out y. I distribute, I get 8x minus 45x minus 60 equals 7. Alrighty, so I put these two together. I get minus 53x plus 60 equals 7. I subtract 60 from both sides, so now I'm on to step 3. So step 3 says I'm going to subtract 60 from both sides. I get minus 53x equals 53, so x equals 1. Step 4 says I'm going to take that 1, I'm going to plug it into the original. So I'm going to say minus 3x plus y equals 2. I'm going to plug in 1, so I get minus 3 plus y equals 2, so y equals 5. So that means my ordered pair is going to be 1, 5. And that's it for 8. Alright, so 9 is just like number 7. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply everything by 2 on the bottom equation. I'm going to keep the top exactly the same. So I'm going to have 5x plus 6y equals negative 45 on top. And I'm going to have 2x minus y equals negative 24 on bottom. That's going to change what I select. So I'm selecting y, so I say 2x minus y equals negative 24. I subtract 2x, I divide by negative 1, I get y equals 2x plus 24. Now I use the top equation. I say 5x plus 6 times 2x plus 24 equals negative 45. I distribute the 2 or the 6. I get 5x plus 12x plus 144 equals negative 45. I combine my like terms. I get 17x plus 144 equals negative 45. I subtract 144 from both sides. I get 17x equals minus 189. I divide by 17 everywhere. I get x equals negative 189 over 17. You can totally give me the decimal if you'd like, but I left it as a whole number, and I'm going to say 2 times negative 189 over 17 minus y equals negative 24. I multiply 2 times negative 189 over 17. So I get negative 378. It's a 7. 378 over 17 minus y equals negative 24. I add negative 378 over 17 to both sides. I get minus y equals, I get negative 30 over 17. So I get positive 30 over 17, so y equals negative 30 over 17. So that's my ordered pair is negative 189 over 17. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's positive. Positive 30 over 17. And that's it for 9. All right, number 10, I pick y. So step 1, I have 2x plus y equals 15. So y equals 15 minus 2x. Step 2, I write the top equation, minus x plus 4y equals negative 3. I'm going to plug in 15 minus 2x, 4y. I'm going to distribute. I get minus x plus 60 minus 8x equals negative 3. I get minus 9x plus 60 equals negative 3. I subtract 60 from both sides. I get minus 9x equals minus 63. So x equals 7. I plug in 7 to the bottom equation, so I get 2 times 7 plus y equals 15. I get 14 plus y equals 15. I subtract 14, I get y equals 1. Step 5, I write that as an ordered pair, 7, 1. Alright, step 1, I circle the top x, so I write x plus 2y equals 2. I subtract 2y from both sides. I get x equals 2 minus 2y. Step 2, I write 7x minus 3y equals negative 20. I write 2 minus 2y in for x, so I say 7 times 2 minus 2y minus 3y equals negative 20. Distribute, I get 14 minus 14y minus 3y equals negative 20. I combine my like terms, I get minus 17y plus 14 equals minus 20. I subtract 14 from both sides, I get minus 17y equals minus 34. I divide both sides by negative 17, I get y equals positive 2. I plug in 2 for y, so I say x plus 2 times 2 equals 2. I get x plus 4 equals 2, so x equals negative 2. That means my ordered pair to finish off is negative 2, 2. Alright, number 12. I'm going to circle the top y, even though it's negative. So I have 3x minus y equals 4. I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. Then I'm going to divide by negative 1, so I get y equals negative 4 plus 3x. Step 2, I'm going to use the bottom equation, minus 9x plus 3, and this time I'm going to put in minus 4 plus 3x, and that's a negative 12 there. So this is going to be equal to negative 12. I'm going to distribute. I get minus 9x plus, minus 12 plus 9x equals negative 12. The x's cancel, so I'm left with negative 12 equals negative 12. The variables disappeared, so since the variables disappeared, since the variables canceled, I have a true statement, which means I have infinite solutions.